If all is one thing, and I am, then guess who has to be the I am? It's the one. There's only one thing and you are it. If we want to sidetrack a little just to prove the existence of God for a second, we're talking about a conscious universe. That's the definition of God. So awakening is basically awakening from your illusion of a separate identity into the I amness, the beingness of the whole, of the one. If evil is part of the oneness and I am it and you are it, we have to understand that evil is part of us. There's this conspiracy theory and I like it, and maybe it's true. So if you go through all the options of what's behind what's going wrong with humanity right now, you won't find absolute evil. Okay, if I am everything, then I can look at every part of myself and I don't have to be afraid, because I can love all parts of myself. And that's the way I learned to love myself. Now we understood that. Now comes the part of practicing it. Okay, welcome. So, I'm going to talk about how to deal with evil and why love won the game. And I'm going to do this not using dogma or any sort of beliefs that you need to carry in order to understand what I'm trying to show you. I will just use basic logic, because I'm a philosopher and I'm interested in argumentation, and that's how logic works. And so we can point to the deepest mysteries of creation and existence using basic logic. And while doing so, we will also prove that God exists and that you are God. Very simple. And so let's get started with establishing basic premises that we need for our argument and for our reasoning about how to deal with evil that we see inside ourselves and inside the world. And I want to establish two premises. And premises are to an argument where the foundation is to a house. So premises are kind of the truth that we have to accept or willingly accept to build an argument on top of it. Okay? So one premise would be when it's raining, I'm getting wet. It's number one. So we accept that premise and we collect some data and understand there's a second premise, it's raining, and we put those two premises together. When it's raining, I'm getting wet, it's raining. And then we can have an argumentation and understand we're getting wet. Okay? That's how basic logic works, basic reasoning. It's very important to understand these principles of logic. They're very simple, but they are really foundational. So, what are the premises we now need for spiritual inquiry into ourselves and into the cosmos? Because Although the mind is oftentimes problematic, when we use it in the right way and learn to use it in the right way, we can come to the basic conclusions that every big or every major wisdom teacher, and also minor wisdom teacher, of course, had. Probably there aren't even minor wisdom teachers. We're all major wisdom teachers. And the first principle, the first premise I want to establish is the oneness of everything. One of the most foundational, maybe the most foundational spiritual laws that you will find in every teaching. It's the oneness of everything. Everything is one thing. There's only one thing, and it's God, creation, existence. However you want to call it, there's only one thing. So all is really one. That's the first premise we need. And now, of course, we could argue or attack that premise by saying, okay, but I see there are different things here in this room, and there are obviously different people, so how can everything be one? And I think there are two ways to prove this first premise. The first one is if you really look down into the lower levels of matter or form, you won't find any matter. You will find that everything is in constant movement and exchange and connection. So nowhere in the observable universe has anyone ever proven or found a fixed separation line between things, because there are no things. There's only vibration and existence vibrating into itself. So the first pillar of the all oneness of everything is try to find a clear borderline between something. You won't be able to, because if you go deeper and deeper, you will only find on the subatomic level vibration and energy. So this is the first thing, and we find metaphors for this everywhere in our lives. Breathing in and breathing out. Trees are breathing in, breathing out oxygen for me, so we're in connection. I'm taking food in, I'm giving stuff out, okay? All the time we have this forms breathing into each other, so nowhere there's a fixed separation. First thing. Second argument, and this might be even stronger and a little harder to grasp, to prove the all oneness of everything, is that even if you would be able to prove that there's something existing apart from everything else in existence, even if you would prove there's this thing and then there's this thing, guess what would be the connection between those two? It would be your consciousness. It would be you. Because you hold everything inside of your consciousness. Everything. It's impossible to prove the existence of anything outside of your consciousness. Or for me, outside of mine. Everything exists within my consciousness. So it's interesting now that what we say about our consciousness, about your consciousness, can also be said about existence itself. Try to prove anything outside of existence. Well, if it's there, then it's inside of existence. Try to prove anything outside of your consciousness. If you can prove it, you prove it inside of your consciousness, because you have to be able to perceive it. So, even if you see two different objects, you will have to admit that they share the same space of your consciousness, which is again the unifying field, connecting those two, holding everything. So there will always be a connection through that field of consciousness that you are. So we established the first premise now. All is one. And now we establish a second premise, which is I am. I am is always and will always be true whenever whoever says it. It won't ever be not true if something says I am. It will always be true. So try to claim I am not. And you will see that it has to be a contradiction in itself, because if you're not, you wouldn't be able to make the claim. Okay? And Descartes had, in his famous meditation, where he did a huge mistake, because he said, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. And that's how he identified ourselves with our thinking mind. And that's when things start to get weird and strange and don't work anymore, because you are not your mind. And Descartes made that mistake of identifying himself with the thinking mind. Or let's put it like this, the consciousness made a mistake of identifying itself with the form of the story of Descartes that it held inside of itself as a separate persona. Too complicated? Okay. I'm putting this simpler. Before Descartes said cogito ergo sum, he said dubio ergo sum. I doubt, therefore I am. And I feel like doubting is closer to unconditioned pure consciousness as thinking, because the doubt is an open question. I'm doubting. There's something here that's doubting, that's asking questions. A little closer to pure consciousness than already thinking and having a fixed form as a thought in your mind, right? Doubt and questioning is the space inside which forms like thoughts and images emerge, and then that's the story we call reality. However, Descartes was there, and you can be there in any second. You can always understand that I am, and that's always true. It will always be true. Impossible to doubt that without proving it. Okay, because doubting it proves it again. That's the whole point. Thanks for following along so far. So now we established two premises, which are all is one and I am. So if all is one thing, and I am, then guess who has to be the I am? It's the one. There's only one thing and you are it. And that proves, by the way, that God exists and that you are it. Because if we want to sidetrack a little just to prove the existence of God for a second, if all is one, there's only one thing, call it cosmos, the universe, existence, creation. And I am, and you are. These two obviously share the same identity, the same I amness. So now ask yourself, am I conscious? Are you conscious? Different question, same answer. Would you be able to ask this question if you weren't conscious? No. Only consciousness can ask the question, am I conscious? So we talk about one big thing, existence itself, that has the attribute of being conscious. So one conscious cosmos, a conscious universe. We're talking about a conscious universe. That's the definition of God. And yes, you are it. I know this is hard to grasp. That's why it's called awakening or enlightenment, because enlightenment is actually understanding that it's never the person that gets enlightened. It's never you, the persona, that gets enlightened, whatever name you're given, however your body looks. It's always the deeper consciousness of the one awakening as the thing that it is, which stops with identifying as the form, as the persona, as the thought, as the story in your mind about who you are. So awakening is basically awakening from your illusion of a separate identity into the I amness, the beingness of the whole, of the one. That's the awakening process, okay? So now we understood that. Now comes the part of practicing it, okay? Because, this world of Maya or form is quite convincing, with ideas like separation, mortality, fear, good and evil. So let's maybe now look at where I want to go with this video, which is the idea of good and evil and how to transcend it, which is actually the same as dealing with evil. So let's understand again that all is one thing. So guess what? Is the evil part of that one thing? Yes. Evil is part of that oneness. Evil is part of God. Whatever we call it evil, right? So if evil is part of the oneness and I am it and you are it, we have to understand that evil is part of us. And now it becomes an internal question. We're not talking about the world of form, Maya, or anything anymore. We're not talking about the outside, we're talking about the inside. So Carl Gustav Jung said this beautifully. He said that in the same degree that we deny our own shadow, the evil inside of us, in the same degree we will project it onto the other one. So that's why we constantly see evil in the world around us and judge and condemn others. Because why? Because we haven't learned to integrate our own shadow into our wholeness, our oneness. So if we want to understand how to deal with evil, we have to look inside ourselves. Because remember, we contain everything. Everything is contained within your consciousness. So all the evil and all the light that you see and meet, it's actually you. It's part of you. And now the question is, how do we confront these shadows inside of us? How do we confront evil? And the question that I posed to myself was, is there anything absolutely evil? Absolutely evil in the world? And now I understood, okay, the world is only my mirror, as within, so without. That's what Jesus said. Then I can look inside of myself. And I looked and I searched inside of myself and I looked, is there anything absolutely evil that cannot be loved? And I looked at jealousy, I looked at fear, I looked at anger, I looked at resentment, I looked at envy. You can look at all of these feelings, all of these thought patterns inside of you. And what I found in myself is that either way it's fear behind all these evil things that we learn to be ashamed of. For example, jealousy or envy. Just my fear of not being enough or not having enough. It's my own inner child. Okay? It's a conditioned thought pattern that tries to tell me I'm not good enough. That's why I have to diminish other people. Okay? Or this part tries to diminish other people. What is that part that wants to control other people, that wants to be in power and is greedy maybe? Look inside of that and you'll find behind the mask is fear. What's the part that so there's fear and then there's inability, for instance, of managing my energies. So what's the part that gives into lust or gives into anger, or you know, the part of you that got drunk at a party and just effed it up? You know, is there evil behind of that? No, it's just unhandled desire. It's unhandled energy. So it's a lack of masterfulness. It's a lack of ability, but it's not evil. It's just like a child that didn't learn yet how to handle its own energies. Okay, so it's not evil, it's inability. And then there's this third thing, which is the lack of compassion. So there's this conspiracy theory and I like it, and maybe it's true. I don't know. Door of wisdom, I don't know. But there's this idea that other dimensional beings are feeding off our lower frequencies, our fear, our hate, war and everything. And so we think, wow, there are these evil energies that feed off our fear, because it's giving them life, right? So that's why they harvest our fear. All right, let's just assume that's true for a second, okay? So then the question is this really evil? No, it's not, because they just try to make their living, okay? And to give you an analogy, you can go into every supermarket still and find meat, dead animal parts. And sometimes it's shredded dead animal parts. It might be a mother pig's womb that's shredded and then put into a, how do you say that in English? Into a form of meat that maybe even has a smiling pig's face, right? And then we can, in Germany we do this a lot. We make bread with butter and then we put meat on top and give it to our children. And then you have a dead animal, maybe a mother pig's womb, maybe a baby pig, whoever, papa pig, we don't know, with a smiling pig on top of it, and we feed that to our children. That's a form of love that we give to our children. So from a pig's perspective, how evil is that? How evil is that? It's the absolute evil. Okay? There's hardly anything more cruel imaginable if we put ourselves into the consciousness of a pig than another species raising and harvesting pigs, killing mothers, children, fathers, grandparents, uncles, sisters, brothers, shredding them, pressing them into something, and then even putting a smiling face of our species on top of it and feeding it to their child. While our pig child is being murdered and barbecued over a fire, and an apple is being put into its mouth, and then we call it an aesthetic meal. From the perspective of a pig, that would be absolute evil. But from our perspective, what is it? It's a lack of compassion. It's a lack of compassion because we haven't yet learned to open our hearts to these beings. Because if we opened our hearts to what we're doing to animals every day, it would be impossible for us to treat them this way, because we would understand that the way we treat them, remember the all oneness, is the way we are treated. So it's not evil. It's just a lack of compassion. It's a lack of love, a lack of light. It's not evil. If you go through all the options of what's behind what's going wrong with humanity right now, you won't find absolute evil. Because the task of radical love and all oneness is, okay, if I am everything, then I can look at every part of myself and I don't have to be afraid. Because I can love all parts of myself. And that's the way I learn to love myself, and that way every part of myself. And that way I learn to learn every part of the world. And I understand that I don't have to be afraid of anything anymore, because all is me. And I learn to love it, and I can love it. I can love even the Epstein and Hitler guys. Which of course doesn't mean to agree with what they're doing. Because my heart is way too wide open to do what they did, but I can love the part inside of them that's closed. And that's so poor, in a way, that it has to do these things to feel better. I mean, how cruel must your soul have been treated to treat other souls like this? How close does your heart have to be if you're able to treat others like this? How close was my heart that I was able to treat others in ways that I don't want to be treated? Which area of my heart can I still open wider, for instance, to animals, so that I stop treating them in a way that I myself wouldn't like to be treated, and you wouldn't either. So there's a lack of ability, a lack of compassion, lack of love, lack of self-love, and there's fear of not being enough. So someone smart said once, someone wise, that all evil in the world is coming from the fear of not being good enough. And if you look at evil inside of yourself and in the world, you will find this again and again. And that fear that you see behind the mask of cruelty, that can be loved. That's something that you can love. So the way to transcend good versus evil is to transcend into oneness and to understand that you are everything. And that's the true transcendence. That's the true way of the light warrior, the light force. To understand and to become the one that we are. So let's practice that together. Thanks for listening. I love you. Talk to you soon.